On the day I returned to court in triumph, news came from the capital that the Empress's best friend had died with her unborn child. At the funeral, the Empress suddenly asked me, "Do you know who Macaron is?" My pupils contracted sharply. My best friend and I were transported here from the modern era 10 years ago. Over that decade, she rose from crown princess to empress step by step, while I grew from the only daughter of the Marquis of Wuding into a general commanding troops on the battlefield. A year ago, when we set out on a campaign, we agreed, if either of us met with an accident, the code word would be Macaron. But looking at the Emperor's face racked with grief before me, I felt ice run through my veins. How could he know that name? Could Ling Zhao's death have something to do with the Emperor? The thought surfaced and I forced it down. Impossible, absolutely impossible. His kindness to Ling Zhao was plain for all to see. Ling Zhao loved Jiangnan loquats, so he had them rushed from Suzhou by swift horses, supplied year-round. Ling Zhao enjoyed theatre, so he kept the capital's most famous troupe in the palace for her private performances. Ling Zhao was sensitive to cold in winter, and he personally drafted designs for a heated chamber, revising the plans 7 or 8 times. Once when Ling Zhao fell ill, he missed court for 3 days to stay at her bedside and feed her medicine himself. Although he, by custom, established 3,000 beauties in the harem, he never once lay with another concubine. When the ministers complained, he only said, "One woman is enough." Besides, I looked at Zhao Chengyan's face, which was written all over with the pain of losing his beloved and his child. How could he have killed her, leaving both dead? Childbirth is dangerous. Perhaps I was overthinking. Seeing me frown in silence, Zhao Chengyan's gaze left me and fell back onto the ice coffin. "I've asked many people and no one knows who Macaron is. You are her best sister. I thought you would know." He reached out and touched his friend's face, his voice so soft it was like talking to himself. "How could you bear to leave me living alone in this world?" I forced down my emotions and asked, "I have never heard that name. Why does your majesty look for him?" Zhao Chengyang choked up for a moment. "When Ling Zhao was having a difficult labor and hemorrhaging, she told me to go find Macaron, saying this person could save her. I asked her who Macaron was and where he was. But after she said that, she fell silent. I knelt on the ground, my heart jolting. I could no longer deceive myself. He was lying. It was impossible for my best friend to ask him to find Macaron to save her, because a Macaron is just a modern pastry. On the day I marched off a year ago, she stood on the city tower to see me off. "Be careful of everything. Come back alive." I warned her that life in the inner palace was complicated and to be cautious about everything. She suddenly said, "Macaron, what?" She lowered her voice. "If either of us gets into trouble, and we hear this name, it means the other has been harmed, and anyone who says this name is not to be trusted." I laughed. "Who would pick a pastry name as a code? I think you're just craving sweets." She glared at me. "People here don't know it's a pastry. They might think it's a person's name. That's what makes it a code." Sure enough, a year later I returned alive, and she was dead too if she really uttered that name. On the brink of death, there is only one possibility. She did not die by accident. In fact, I cannot even trust the person lying beside her, the one who is heartbroken for her. Right in front of me, I lowered my eyes, covering my expression. "Emperor, my condolences. The Queen Dowager's spirit in heaven would not want to see you like this." Zhao Chengyang waved his hand. "You've barely returned. Stay a bit longer to keep her company." After speaking, he staggered toward the door. When I reached the doorway, I suddenly called after him, "Your Majesty." On the day Her Majesty the Empress had a difficult labor, who was attending her? He froze for a moment. "Several imperial physicians, and her personal maids." "Why, nothing. I just wanted to know who was with her at the end." Zhao Chengyang looked at me for a moment before speaking. "Those people couldn't even save my Ling Zhao. They're all useless. They've already atoned with their lives." My face showed no expression, but my back had gone ice cold. Within a single day, everyone who had been in the delivery room attending to her was gone without exception. This wasn't atonement so much as silencing. My nails dug deep into my flesh to stop myself from asking him why he would do such a thing. After everyone left the morning hall, I slowly rose and walked to the ice coffin. Ling Zhao lay there quietly, as if asleep, but I knew she would never wake. If Zhao Chengyang really had done this to her, I couldn't imagine how shattered and desperate she must have been in front of the man she had loved for 10 years before she died. I held her hand, But my heart skipped a beat. That hand felt wrong. Ling Zhao's right thumb had a hidden bone spur. From a riding accident 3 years ago when Zhao Chengyang was contending for the throne with several royal princes, she didn't want to distract him, so she refused to call a doctor and instead found a wandering bone setter. Later the bone healed, but a small protrusion remained, barely noticeable unless touched carefully. But this hand, the thumb joint was smooth and flawless, with no trace at all. I turned over her wrist and looked at her palm. Ling Zhao's hands were delicate and soft, yet this palm bore thin calluses, and the edge of the Na eminence showed a hardening from gripping a sword. I slowly lifted my head and gazed at that face. It looked too similar, the brows and eyes, the nose bridge, the lip shape all exactly alike, but the more I looked, the more something felt off. I leaned a little closer, and indeed I found the edge of skin at the hairline. I stepped back, my mind buzzing. This wasn't Ling Zhao. Where had Ling Zhao gone? If the ice coffin didn't contain Ling Zhao, could she still be alive? My heart pounded violently. At that moment, a rustling sound came from the doorway. I whirled around. Who is it? A stooped figure huddled by the door, trembling with fear. It was the old nanny from the Fengyi Palace who prays at night. General, forgive me, I didn't mean to peek. It's just that someone asked me to hand this to you. She tremulously from her bosom produced a piece of cloth, cupped in both hands and handed over. It was an ordinary white cotton handkerchief, with a orchid grass emblem embroidered in the center. The stitches meticulous, the palace embroidery style. Who told you to give this to me? It was the Empress Dowager. The nanny spoke in a very low voice. A few days ago, the Empress Dowager called me over and said that if anything happened to her, I should hand this handkerchief to you, as a keepsake. I thought she was worried about her first birth and overthinking it, but I didn't expect her words to come true. If Ling Zhao were truly afraid of a birth mishap, she would never leave me a handkerchief as a keepsake, nor would she have a plain nanny deliver it. Did she say anything else? No, nothing else. The Empress Dowager only said that once you see the handkerchief, you'll understand. After the nanny left, I lowered my head to look at the handkerchief in my hand, a very ordinary orchid grass pattern. Which palace lady wouldn't have several embroidered herb handkerchiefs? Yet I knew Ling Zhao never embroidered orchid grass on a handkerchief. She disliked orchid grass as too plain, saying it was the old lady's design. So why did she specially embroider orchid grass and leave it for me? I turned and studied it again. Under the candlelight, the stitches of the orchid grass looked a bit odd. The orchid grass has 5 leaves in total, but the direction of one leaf was a little off, not in a natural growth direction, but as if deliberately bent into an arrow shape, pointing straight downward at the bottom of the handkerchief. Ling Zhao and I grew up together. Whenever we played hide and seek, she would fear I wouldn't find her, so she would deliberately leave many clues. The arrow on the handkerchief matched exactly the crooked pattern she used to draw as a child. I held the handkerchief, my mind racing. Ling Zhao lived in the Fengyi Palace to the east. Directly below it was the south, where countless palaces stood. After ruling out all possibilities one by one, I clenched the handkerchief and looked toward the south study, the closest to Fengyi Palace. That was where Zhao Chengyan's daily office was. It wasn't originally there, but he moved the south study closer to Ling Zhao. Could Ling Zhao have been hidden there? At midnight, I changed into night clothes and slipped into the south study. After a thorough search, I found no secret rooms or hidden compartments, and no other marks Ling Zhao had left behind. I was about to leave when I accidentally bumped into the painting beside the desk. I reached out and pulled it, revealing Ling Zhao's portrait. Ling Zhao had always told me that Zhao Chengyang was an accomplished painter and had painted many portraits for her, all of which she loved, but Zhao Chengyang didn't let her show them to others, saying such a beautiful Ling Zhao could only be admired by himself. I opened the painting scroll to take a closer look, but instead 2 letters fell out. From Shen Hanshuang. It was Ling Zhao's handwriting, the letter she wrote to me. How did it end up here? By the moonlight I drew out the stationery. The contents were like her usual letters, saying that other than the child kicking in her belly a bit, she was well in the palace and I shouldn't worry. But the last sentence made my hand start to tremble. If you haven't found Macaron, don't come back to see me. The 2 letters said almost the same thing, both signed a month ago, the dates only a few days apart. Only in the second letter, when she mentioned Macaron, she sounded more urgent. It was a warning. she was telling me not to return, that there was danger. Every time I went on campaign, Ling Zhao unfailingly wrote me a letter every month. This past month I didn't receive her letter and thought perhaps she was too far along to bother, or had given birth early. I didn't think much of it and, eager to return home, set off for the capital after taking the city. Yet this letter turned up here. That meant the 2 letters she wrote that month had been held back by Zhao Chengyang. No wonder Zhao Chengyang would think Macaron, that the dragon was a person, because he had read Ling Zhao's letter to me. She told me not to come back because she knew I would be in danger, but I returned safe and sound, and she had disappeared. Ling Zhao, what happened while I was gone? Over the next few days I watched Zhao Chengyang stare blankly at Ling Zhao's spirit tablet. Distraught, a little eunuch nearby whispered that the emperor had taken no food or water these days and wouldn't listen to anyone's advice. I only sneered inwardly. Ling Zhao's disappearance must be connected to him. But why would he put out a fake in her place? I wanted to confront him, but until I found Ling Zhao or cleared everything up, I had to endure. 3 days later, the Empress was buried. The imperial tomb lay 30 li from the city, and the funeral procession stretched vast and solemn. Zhao Chengyang personally bore the coffin, ministers followed, and wailing echoed to the heavens. I did not attend, however convincing an act, that was not my Ling Zhao. I pretended to faint from grief, then slipped back into the palace. In the cold palace a mad consort was brandishing a wooden hairpin. The hairpin on my head is the Empress's token. If you see me, you should bow. I halted and looked at the purple wooden hairpin in her hand, my pupils constricting. The very gift I had carved and given to Ling Zhao. She had never taken it off even after becoming Empress. Where did you get this hairpin? The mad consort was startled, clutching her head and squatting. Don't kill me, don't kill me. I didn't steal it, I found it. I softened my voice. Where did you pick it up? She shook her head desperately and wouldn't say another word. I pulled a piece of pastry from my sleeve and eased my tone. Tell me where you found the hairpin and I'll give you this. She stared at the pastry and swallowed. Really, really. She hesitated a long time, then slowly reached out and pointed toward the back of the cold palace. There's a well, it smells, lots of dead rats. She finished and snatched the pastry, then ran off. Following the direction she pointed, I saw the dry well crushed by a large stone, but I stood not far off, afraid to approach, because beside the well were not only the marks Ling Zhao left, but the air carried a strong stench. Having spent years on battlefields, I knew that smell all too well. This was not the smell of a dead rat, but of a corpse. I was afraid that it might really be Ling Zhao. I stood there, my mind filled with every image of her from my childhood to now. I closed my eyes. After so many times on the battlefield I thought I was used to life and death, but at that moment I suddenly realized I had only ever grown used to other people's deaths. The moon moved to the zenith before I opened my eyes and slowly shifted my feet. My hands were scraped, my nails torn, blood running through my fingers. The stone finally moved and revealed the well opening. The smell grew stronger. I lit a tinder and shone it into the well. The bottom was deep, but I could see a person curled in the dried mud. I don't know how I managed to lift her out. The body was severely decomposed, even the face was gone, but I still recognized her. She wore the red string on her wrist that I had given her, now faded, the scented pouch at her waist that I prayed for at the temple before I left for war, and the bulge under her fine clothes. I knelt on the ground holding her, motionless. My Ling Zhao, who loved to look beautiful when she was alive, would take half an hour just to comb her hair every morning, had her clothes perfumed, and used the best rouge. But now, she lay in my arms with no face, her clothes tattered, her body marked by where maggots had crawled. What had she suffered? Did it hurt? When she died, did she ever call my name? I didn't dare to imagine, but I couldn't help imagining. In her belly was the little life she had longed for. She wrote to me that the baby kicked and fussed, keeping her from sleeping. I can picture her writing those words, every line full of smiles. She said that when the child was born she would accept me as the godmother, that when the child grew up I would teach him to ride and shoot arrows, that when we were old we would sit together in the courtyard and watch children run all over. But now I held her and the child who never had a chance to see the world, and hatred grew in my heart. What had she done wrong that Zhao Chengyang would be so cruel to her, not even sparing the child in her womb? At sunrise I dressed Ling Zhao neatly, preparing to carry her away, and found a blood-stained gold hairpin clenched tightly in her hand. I gently pried open her fingers. The pin was already broken in two, revealing a slip of paper inside. My eyes fell on the two characters Mew Mew, and tears sprung to my eyes. Mew Mew was the nickname I had in the modern world. After traveling here, no one had called me that except Ling Zhao. With blurred vision I read on, Mew Mew, if you see this paper, it means I have been murdered, because I discovered a secret that must not be spoken. 5. Once I finished reading everything, I finally understood what had happened. Ling Zhao said that ever since Zhao Chengyang ascended the throne, he had changed completely. The former crown prince had her, the realm, and a frank, honorable manner in his eyes. But after sitting on that dragon throne, all that remained in his gaze was suspicion and lust for power. I shed blood and fought on the front lines, winning battle after battle. The capital praised me as the country's defending heroine, but to Zhao Chengyang, these praises sounded like needles piercing his heart. Since I set out on campaign, the streets have been full of gossip. They say this realm was won thanks to the Wuding Marquis's house and to me, Shen Huang. They say this emperor merely basked in my reflected glory. When those words reached the palace, Ling Zhao couldn't help defending me, saying I am loyal to the sovereign and the country, with no divided loyalties. On the surface Zhao Chengyang only sighed that it is hard to be an emperor, never mentioning his suspicions of me. In truth, every word of those remarks had been carved into his heart. It wasn't until last month, when she accidentally overheard a conversation between Zhao Chengyang and his confidant eunuch Li outside the imperial study, that she realized he had long been plotting against me. He said I held the military command, my merits surpassed the sovereign's, and now the troops respect me more than they respect him. If I turned traitor, the realm would no longer belong to the Zhao family. He planned to wait until I returned from the campaign, then strip me of military power on the charge of colluding with foreign enemies, and have the entire Wuding Marquis household executed to eliminate future trouble. Ling Zhao was struck as if by lightning, rushing forward to argue with him. She is my dearest sister, a meritorious contributor who helped your Zhao family win the realm, never once having a trace of betrayal. How could you treat her like this? She even knelt before him, begging him to remember 10 years of affection, to remember the deeds of my life-risking service, to spare me, to spare the Marquisate of Wuding. But Zhao Chengyang only looked at her coldly and said, in an imperial household, there is no room for personal feelings, only the realm. He accused Ling Zhao of misplaced compassion, her eyes clouded by sisterly bonds. Ling Zhao knelt in the southern study all night for me, crying until her throat was hoarse, and for the first time Zhao Chengyang ignored her. She could only use the pretext of the monthly letters to secretly remind me not to return, but she waited and waited, without receiving any reply from me. Then she knew that Zhao Chengyang no longer trusted even her. Those letters must have been withheld by him. Ling Zhao said that in this ancient time I was her only support. How could she stand by and watch me die? So she decided to take a gamble, to bet on Zhao Chengyang's feelings for her, to bet that he would spare my life for the sake of the child in her womb. 2 years ago she learned a secret from Zhao Chengyang's sleep-talking. It turned out the late Empress did not actually pass the throne to the crown prince. Zhao Chengyang had altered the succession edict, otherwise the throne would not have fallen to him. She had not even told me this, but intended to use it as bargaining chip to save me. In the last sentence, Ling Zhao wrote, Moo Moo, if you are reading this, it means I lost the bet. I overestimated his feelings for me and underestimated the corruption of power. Youthful affection ultimately cannot withstand that seed of doubt in his heart. By the end the handwriting on the note had become crooked, the ink blurred in several places. I suppose her hand was shaking when she wrote it, and tears had fallen onto it too. I pinched the small thin paper, my knuckles whitening. I looked down at the Ling Zhao in my arms, her face unrecognizable. Her body had long since stiffened from decay, her fine clothes rotted beyond recognition. It was obvious she had been dead for at least a week. No wonder Zhao Chengyang wanted a similar woman, even to strip Ling Zhao's face to use as a disguise. He was afraid someone would notice, or he wanted to draw me into the trap. The wind blows in from all directions, pouring straight into my heart and stirring up towering waves. 10 years, an entire 10 years. What a devoted, inseparable imperial couple. What an emperor who cherishes Ling Zhao as his very life. Zhao Chengyang possessed Ling Zhao's love for 10 years, Yet in the end he used the cruelest method to put Ling Zhao to death. I laughed, the laugh filling my throat with the taste of blood, laughing until I knelt on the ground, holding Ling Zhao's body, calling her name over and over. Ling Zhao, my foolish Ling Zhao, how could you use your own life to win me a sliver of hope? The only response was the wind through the cold palace and that lingering stench of rot. Hatred wrapped around my entrails, choking me almost to death. I looked toward the eastern palace. Zhao Chengyang, when you were suppressing the rebellion for your achievements, who led 500 soldiers to help you break through the encirclement. When you ascended the throne, who blocked 3 waves of assassins for you, when you were seated on the dragon throne, who was fighting and bleeding on the front lines to protect your realm. It was me, Shun Hanshuang. But now you resent me for outshining you and want to slaughter everyone in the Marquis of Wuding's household, and you've already had my Ling Zhao killed first. I, Shun Hanshuang, can by myself secure half the realm for Zhao Chengyang, can make the enemy army tremble at the mere rumor, and thus can by myself overturn his kingship and ruin his country. I carefully carried Ling Zhao's body to a side hall of the cold palace, wrapped her in clean cloth, and used the medicines I had on me to temporarily suppress the stench of decay. I knew this was not yet the time to lay her to rest. I wanted her to watch how I would tear to pieces everything Zhao Chengyang possessed. Back at the Marquis of Wuding's residence, I dismissed everyone and sat alone in the study. Sleepless through the night, I sifted through all the clues and finally realized, Zhao Chengyang's weakness was never his harem, but the illegitimacy of his throne. He falsified the late emperor's will, and that is his greatest vulnerability. Not everyone at court accepted Zhao Chengyang. The late emperor had 7 sons. 9th Prince Zhao Changyu was the emperor's favorite and was originally the most likely to succeed to the throne. After Zhao Chengyang ascended, he pressured the 9th prince, demoted him to a suburban fief, and stripped him of his military command. Ling Zhao was Grand Tutor Gu's late-born daughter and had always been cherished. If Grand Tutor Jiyu learned that Ling Zhao had been brutally killed, he would likely not spare Zhao Chengyang. That night I changed into my night clothes again and slipped into the palace. Sure enough, in the hidden compartment beneath Ling Zhao's bed, I found the late emperor's will. It was written in cinnabar on yellow silk, the characters, "Clear, pass the throne to 7th son Changyu," but the name on the edict had been painted over with a special ink, and the characters "for Chengyang" rewritten. The ink had blended with the cinnabar so it wasn't obvious at first. Over time the ink faded and the alteration became plain to see. I carefully put the will away and was about to leave when I heard footsteps outside the door. I hid behind the bookcase and watched Zhao Chengyang enter. He held Ling Zhao's portrait and muttered, "Ling Zhao, why did you betray me? Why did you help Shun Hanshuang? Why did you learn my secret?" His voice had a touch of grievance, as if he were the one who had been harmed. I sneered inwardly. This man always thinks he is in the right and that everyone else is at fault. He never reflected on how his suspicion and lust for power led to the deaths of his wife and child. I left the study without a sound and returned to the marquisate. Not even half a month later, Zhao Chengyang could no longer restrain himself and held a banquet to celebrate my triumphant return, but I knew it was a Hongmen feast. When he saw me enter the hall clad in silver armor, he barked in a deep voice, "Shun Hanshuang, how dare you bring a weapon into the hall? Are you attempting treason?" I sneered coldly. "I, Shun Hanshuang, am loyal and devoted, serving the country and the people. How can there be any talk of treason?" Zhao Chengyang sat on the dragon throne, his tone and expression severe. "Bringing a weapon into the hall is irrefutable evidence. Guards, seize her." But not one of the guards beside him dared move. My spear was pointed straight at his brow. "You are wrong. I did not come today to commit treason, but to purge the court of corrupt ministers, to execute the treacherous, and to expose your heinous crimes." Zhao Chengyang. No sooner had the words left my mouth than a chorus of soldiers' shouts rose behind me, their voices shaking the heavens. 9th Prince walked over and stood at my side, his gaze icy as he looked at Zhao Chengyang. Grand Tutor Jiyu then drew the late emperor's will from his sleeve and called out loudly, "What crime did General Shun commit? What crime did my son commit? Today, we will let the whole world know how you altered the will and, as a usurping emperor, murdered your wife and child." Grand Tutor Jiyu unfolded the will and handed it to the ministers to see. The officials stared at the handwriting on the will, at the traces of alteration, and were all struck with horror, whispering among themselves, This will has been tampered with. So the late emperor originally intended to pass the throne to ninth prince. How dare Zhao Chengyang forge the will, his outrageously audacious. Zhao Chengyang looked at the will, his face ashen. Fake, it's all fake, you forged it, you colluded to frame me. Forged, I sneered, taking Ling Zhao's final note from my bosom. Zhao Chengyang, this is Ling Zhao's dying note written with her life on the line. It records the secret of how you altered the will. The Empress did not die in childbirth. She discovered you changing the decree and you killed her. To cover your crime you had someone impersonate Ling Zhao and silenced all the palace attendants and imperial physicians. You thought you had covered every angle. But no matter how well you planned, you never expected Ling Zhao would leave this evidence for me in the dry well. I stepped toward him step by step, my voice echoing through the court. Each word bleeding with grief. Zhao Chengyang, ask your own heart, how did Ling Zhao treat you? How did I, Shenhan Huang, treat you? Ling Zhao loved you for 10 years, bore your children for you, guarded the harem for you, never once uttering a complaint. I fought for you on the battlefield, faced death 9 times out of 10, won this vast land, never once had a divided heart. And you, because of your own suspicion, you tried to silence me, because of your own secret, you murdered your wife and child, threw Ling Zhao into a dry well, leaving her body mutilated beyond recognition. Zhao Chengyang, are you worthy to be emperor? Are you worthy to be a husband? Are you worthy to be a father? Each sentence struck at his heart. Zhao Chengyang was driven by me to the dragon throne, with nowhere left to retreat. He looked at me, his eyes full of madness and venomous hatred, and howled. She brought it on herself. She betrayed me. She never loved me. Her heart belonged only to you, Shenhan Huang. For you she dared even to threaten me. She even had another man outside. A woman so fickle and loose deserves to die. I was stunned for a moment, then felt the absurdity of it all. What did you say? Ling Zhao betrayed you. She had another man. Zhao Chengyang, have you gone mad? I'm not crazy. His eyes were red as he pointed at me. In the letter she wrote you, telling you to find something called Makaran, that must be the name of her lover. When she died she was still calling out Makaran. She never had me in her heart. I killed her. I killed that bastard child. It was all her own doing. Hearing this, I could no longer hold back. I burst into loud laughter, tears streaming from my eyes. Makaran, Zhao Chengyang, weren't you the one who wanted to know who Makaran was? I'll tell you now, Makaran isn't anyone's name at all, it's just a pastry. It's a secret code shared only between Ling Zhao and me. I watched his face go blank and continued. A year ago when I went off to war, Ling Zhao and I agreed that if anything happened to either of us, we would say the word Makaran to warn the other of danger, to warn the other not to trust anyone. In the letter she wrote me telling me to look for Makaran, she was telling me not to come back, to flee far away to escape your poisonous hands. Her crying out Makaran as she died was her telling me she had been killed by someone, her telling me not to trust you, a monster in human skin. The betrayal you obsess over is only the product of your suspicions. The adultery you imagined is nothing but a pastry. I've long heard that emperors are heartless and suspicious. Seeing you today, the reputation is well deserved. Zhao Chengyang, you lost not the empire, but people's hearts. 10 years of feeling, everything you destroyed with your own hands. No, impossible, Zhao Chengyang murmured, retreating and collapsing into the dragon throne, his gaze unfocused. Makaran is a pastry, just a pastry. Ling Zhao, she didn't betray me. He finally realized that the person he had killed with his own hands was the woman who had loved him for 10 years and had risked everything for him, and the child she had yet to bear. His suspicions and lust for power had driven him to destroy the most precious things he had. He stared at Ling Zhao's final note, at the will that had been tampered with, at the scornful looks of the court officials, at the hatred in my eyes, and suddenly burst into a sharp, wild laugh. Ha ha ha, I was wrong, Ling Zhao, it was my fault. In the midst of that laughter, he suddenly drew his sword from his waist and drove it into his own chest. Blood splashed onto the dragon throne, staining the bright yellow silk. Zhao Chengyang fell back onto the throne, his gaze fixed on the window, still murmuring, Ling Zhao, I'm sorry. A once great emperor ultimately met a fate of dismemberment, becoming the laughingstock of the world with Zhao Chengyang's death. The court descended into chaos. After consulting with the other ministers, Grand Tutor Jiyu and the officials installed 9th Prince Zhao Changyu on the throne. Once the new emperor ascended, his first decree was to posthumously honor Lingzhao as Empress Xiaoqun, bury her with full imperial rights in the mausoleum, and exonerate the palace servants and imperial physicians whom Zhao Chengyang had killed. He was grateful for my role in quelling the rebellion and restoring order, intending to ennoble me as guardian of the state, promote me, and reward me with 10,000 taels of gold and 1,000 acres of fertile land. I, however, shook my head and refused all the rewards. I had stormed the palace not for fame or riches, but to avenge Lingzhao. Now that the great vengeance was achieved and my wish fulfilled, military power and wealth meant nothing to me. Han Shuang asks for nothing more than to take Lingzhao's ashes with her. The new emperor studied me for a long while, and finally sighed. Granted. I handed over the tiger tally and the general's seal, then turned and walked out of the court. I brought Lingzhao's body back from the cold palace and went to the imperial tomb to retrieve her face. She wouldn't have wanted any part of herself left here either. I cremated her, gathered a handful of ashes, and placed them in an exquisite brocade box. I returned once to the Wuding Marquis's residence, knelt and kowtowed to my parents 3 times, and took my leave. They knew of my bond with Lingzhao and understood the pain in my heart. They did not try to stop me, only reddened-eyed, urging me to take good care of myself. I rode my horse, carrying Lingzhao's ashes, and went out to the Broken Soul Cliff on the outskirts of the city. This was the first place Lingzhao and I saw when we first crossed into this world. Back then we were unarmed and supported each other in a strange land. From here we began, and 10 years passed like flowing light. Standing at the edge of Duanhuan Cliff, the wild wind howled, whipping my long hair and scattering the ashes held in the brocade box, turning them into flecks of white drifting toward the vast distance. I held the brocade box and sat quietly at the cliff's edge. Lingzhao, look, this vast realm in the end still changed masters. You used your life to protect me. I avenged you, ruined Zhao Chengyan's kingdom and made him pay his blood debt. But Lingzhao, without your ancient times, it's not good at all. There is no milk tea here, no hot pot, no dramas we used to binge together, and no macarons that we shared. The people here are treacherous, the emperors are ruthless, everything makes me feel sick. We promised to return to the modern era together, but you couldn't bear to leave because of that relationship. I stayed for you, yet in the end you abandoned me and left first. I set down the brocade box, slid the purple wood hairpin into my hair, and said softly, Lingzhao, I've come to find you. As the words fell, I leaped and jumped off Broken Soul Cliff. Below the cliff yawned a bottomless abyss, shrouded in mist and clouds. Only the howling wind remained and that familiar call, moo moo. From then on, in this world, there was no longer the nation-guarding General Shen Hanzhuang, nor the Empress Xiaoqun Jiyu Lingzhao. When she opened her eyes again, what met her gaze was a white ceiling, white walls, and the air was filled with the smell of disinfectant. A hospital. I twitched my fingers, and the nurse adjusting the 4 by the bed heard the movement and turned to look. You're awake. You've been in a coma for 3 days, finally came to. I parted my lips, my voice was as hoarse as sandpaper scraping. Where is this? The Municipal First Hospital. The nurse walked over to take my blood pressure. You fell down the stairs, hit your head, and were unconscious for 3 days. Your friend came to see you every day. She was just here a little while ago. Friend? My heart leapt. What friend? A girl about your age, wearing a ponytail. I threw off the quilt in one motion and was about to get out of bed. The nurse jumped in fright. Hey, what are you doing? You're still on and 4. I grabbed her sleeve and asked anxiously, what's her name? That girl, what's her name? The nurse was startled by me and said dumbly, I don't know, she didn't say her name. I ran barefoot toward the door. The corridor was crowded. I pushed through the people and rushed for the elevator. When it wouldn't move, I turned and dashed into the stairwell. 1st floor, 2nd floor, 3rd. When I reached the lobby on the 1st floor, someone was walking toward me against the light. She wore her hair in a ponytail and a white t-shirt, carrying a plastic bag with 2 cups of milk tea. The sunlight fell on her face, as if gilding it. She saw me and walked over with a smile. Here, your favorite taro boba. Less sugar with ice, but you can't have anything cold right now. So, I grabbed her in a hug, my eyes stinging at once. Lingjiao, she wrenched my hand away forcefully, reached out and flicked my forehead. Are you stupid? This is the modern day. My name is Lu Yao. I opened my mouth, at a loss for words. She put her arm around my shoulders and started toward the door. Come on, since you're awake, let's go handle the discharge paperwork. Tonight we'll go eat hot pot, then go home and watch dramas. I've saved up 10 episodes I haven't watched. I've been waiting for you. She pushed me forward, and the sunlight was so warm it made me want to cry. When we reached the doorway, I suddenly stopped. Lu Yao, I looked at her and asked softly, does it hurt? She froze for a moment, then laughed. It hurts, but if you go buy me macarons, I won't hurt anymore. I looked at her and nodded hard. Okay, I'll buy you 10,000, then you're not allowed to go back on your word. I don't even know if I can finish eating these 10,000 macarons in my lifetime. Hand in hand, we walked into the radiant sunlight together.